when the reality finally sunk into my brain, I realized it's all a mirage. It's
Yeah.
all a joke. The only thing that's really solid to me was the precious metals group because paper is not real money. The worst thievery a government can do is that hidden inflationary cycle. We don't have time to screw around anymore.
Dr. Ott, thank you so much for being here today. And of course, I have to start with your most famous story about Paul Volcker, who was the chair of the Federal Reserve back in the kickoff of this system. Could you recount that story for our viewers, please?
Oh yes, I'm glad that you remember that. A lot of
I
people
do.
that I've talked to, I've done lectures and seminars, as you may well know, and I thought it was so important to tell people, but people seem to think and scratch their head a little bit and say, so what? But because of
It's
you
everything.
and what you do, it is critical, I would say. So we're on the same page with that. Real quickly, yes, in gosh, time flies. It was in the, I think 83, so that kind of dates us a little bit. I was fortunate enough or unfortunate enough to get a scholarship to back to um, training sessions in New York City. We stayed at the Marquis Marriott, and I was so young and full of, myself that
Yeah.
it was a great honor. I knew I would make $1 million+ in a year, and yeah, I did. When you learn the secrets of arbitrage and
Can we
also,
talk a little bit more about that? Because there could be a lot of viewers here that don't understand what arbitrage is. So could you put
I'm
that in
sorry,
simple
yes.
for,
Yes, basically arbitrage is a way to, if you know the outcome already of something like whether it's orange juice trading or whatever, you can, it's not illegal, but it's questionable ethically, in my opinion, because you have insider knowledge and you come in and you can basically buy, sell, or buy high, sell short, or reverse that, depending on what the outcome is are that you already know. The best cases is Eddie Murphy's the Trading Places show with Eddie
mm-hmm.
Murphy. He comes and shorts the orange juice and rakes, takes the boys to the cleaners. That's exactly that's what arbitrage is. Just watch Eddie Murphy's Trading Places, and you can see that.
Okay, I
Uh,
didn't want to derail you because this is such
yeah.
an important, I do want to say before we move forward that even though that seemed like a million years ago, the significance and the importance of this happening in the early 80s, and particularly when you look on the charts, is that was really the big kickoff to a purely, debt-based system that, to your point, became even easier and easier to rig and winners and losers easier and easier to pick.
Exactly. Yes. And it was great talking to you about this. I don't know how many years ago we did
It
that,
was a
but
while.
it's been a while. And yeah, it still haunts me to this day because when the reality finally sunk into my brain, I realized it's all a mirage. It's
Yeah.
all a joke. The only thing that's really solid to me was the precious metals group because what else is there?
Right.
Uh, I wish, I tell you, I wish I had done what Volcker said to do because I honestly blew him off as well. He's old school. He really doesn't know, what's really new and happening, which was the sizzle of arbitrage mutual funds, just being able to see companies rise, and that was so. If I had done what he'd said
Yeah.
and and went into gold. Well, let me just backtrack to those who don't know what did he really say. Okay, what did he say? I'll tell you. It was a very simple presentation. It was the grand finale of our month-long, 6 weeks long training there in Marquis Marriott. And keep in mind, I had all these notes about how to analyze stocks, how to and who to talk to about the commodities trading, et cetera, derivatives basically. And so I was like, okay, this is cool. It was not announced that he would even be there. It was the
Yeah.
final meeting before we all went and got our bags and headed to the airport. So it was the last one. Basically, he said, "You don't do any paper." This is Paul Volcker. That was the central message. He actually took and I'm very close to him in the seating. There was like 24 of us. He took a very unique paper bill out of his money clip and he held it up and front and back. He just showed it to us. And I thought, what is that? Because it had almost a brown back to it. It didn't look like a regular dollar or $100 bill or that type of thing. It was brown. When I looked at it, it was a $100,000 Federal Reserve note.
Ah, okay.
And he took it, brought a cigar out, lit the thing on fire so it was burning heavily, and then used that to light his stogie, his cigar, and then had a metal wastebasket there and dumped it into the metal wastebasket. It was a really amazing show, of what you want to call a metaphor. Very powerful metaphor. See, I was thinking immediately, this man has huge money to burn, for a metaphor.
Yeah.
Who would not, I mean, give me $100,000 and watch what happens. I'll turn it into a million type of thing. What is he burning money for? As he's puffing away on his stogie with the $100,000 light, the message was, you are the elite. You're being trained this most important lesson. You take all of the paper profits that you might make through the arbitrage or whatever stock sells buy high, sells short, et cetera, and you put it into these, and he pulled out of his pocket a handful of gold coins and shook them and clink, clink, clink. They made a very unique sound, and you got some right there. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Those are unique sounds. If you have a handful of them in your pocket, clink, 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 clink.
Yeah.
And he said, all paper. He says he recommended quarterly taking profits, and then he gave us each a laminated uh, file card with key numbers to call for the various mints, uh, Canadian Maple Leaf Mint. I didn't realize the United States Treasury still was making gold coins, but whether it's Krugerrands or what have you, he gave us the list that it can, and these were special because they were actually a little bit below spot, insider trading in the Treasury, which he would, of course, Federal Reserve would have that
Right.
connection. So I thought, well, that's nice, but it's a novelty. It really didn't excite me. It's not glamorous, in other words, to go there.
Right.
And so I said, okay, this guy he's old and I want to make sure I understand him. So when he finished up, he asked for questions because he said made it clear everything you have goes into this. Not, I thought maybe it'd be more wise to do 40%, maybe 50%, but he said everything. And
So
here's
meaning
what
everything that all of those paper profits that you would take on a quarterly basis needs to go into gold.
yeah, exactly. And then store it offshore. That's 100% correct. And I'm sitting there, I'm literally scratching my head and thinking this guy is off base. Uh, because keep in mind, for at least a week, we were trained on how to do risk analysis and to not put everything into one grouping. Diversification was our goal, okay, to be widely diversified. And so that didn't sit well with all of the week we'd had before. So I asked him the question. I said, Chairman Volcker, with all due respect, why would we put all of our eggs in one basket? That was how I couched the question. And he never acted like he never even heard me, Lynette. He was like, it's when silence goes for 30 seconds, even to a minute, it's like,
Yeah.
am I being blown off? All he did was continue to puff his soaking and blow smoke rings. He made pretty good smoke rings,
Did he?
but
That's
yeah,
good to
they
know
were
about him.
they were pretty well done. He was coming out, and I'm sitting there. Should I repeat the question or what? And no, he was very good. He was like a showman because he just let it sink. And he says, and he pulls. I remember he pulls the coins back out and shakes them. And as he said, until you have these, and shakes his hand, you have no eggs.
Oh, wow.
And how true that was, because paper is not hard currency. It's not real money.
No. I happen to have, I looked in my little stack of a whole bunch of currencies that are government debt-based currencies. And this happens to be from the Republic of Iran, which
Iran?
yeah,
No.
which is a little timely right now. I'm like, do I
Well,
have it
yeah.
yet? Of course, it's 10,000 reals and I can't buy anything with it. But I have to ask you, are you seeing some similarities in attitude? Because you were a young guy in the 80s when this whole system was kicking off. And the whole system was about the ability to devalue the currency and push paper prices up, which is what Paul Volcker, the head of the central bank, the Federal Reserve, this is exactly what he was talking about. And who, after all, would know more about what they were doing to the currency than the central banks? So,
Exactly. Yeah.
and what are the central banks doing?
Well, it goes back to the demon of inflation, Lynette. You know this, the power of money. And I became during the 80s, I did a lot of study on the Weimar Republic
Mm-hmm,
and what
mm-hmm.
happened after World War One, the Great War, and how, because my family is German. We had relatives over there during that period of time, and they wrote letters to my family. My dad and my grandfather had all this during that era, and they couldn't even afford to get over to America or leave. Whenever you're paid literally twice a day, and you take wheelbarrows full of marks, paper marks, to buy a loaf of bread, you got a problem.
So,
And that led to the rise of Hitler. I mean, that really was what fueled Hitler's rise in the 30s.
yeah, yeah, it was. It's the degradation of money, which is also something that Mussolini talked about.
Yes, and so who ends up paying the bills? It's the common folk.
Mm-hmm,
It's the people.
mm-hmm.
And the ravages of war is always paid the, by the people,
Yep,
always.
yep.
So yeah, that's why it's so important to me to get to understand this. Um, that led to the destruction of the Soviet Union. The people were suffering. They couldn't buy anything like we could in our wonderful supermarkets in America.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what really led to the fall of communism. Communism
Yes.
and totalitarianism, it squeezes the people for the oligarchy at the top. That's the fact. That's the fact as far as I see it. Now, that said tons to me, okay? Said tons. Because it's flipped. The script is flipped in the last 20 plus years, 30 plus years. We are the worst thievery a government can do is that hidden inflationary cycle. And 99% of people, Lynette, don't know how it works.
Right.
They complain about it, they gripe about it, but the buck stops at the top.
Yep.
Okay. It's called End the Fed. It's called Get Back on a Gold Standard, and there is no inflation. You know this truth, Lynette. There is no inflation if you have gold-backed currency. And
Yep.
that is the message of Paul Volcker.
Yep.
I,
And that is so true. But Dr. Ott, I mean, there are a couple things in here that I want to ask you about. And so we'll start here because that's where you finished it. And I do believe that I'm battling for a global redeemable gold in the system because we're seeing with private equity asset backed where you have no access to the underlying. It doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. It goes back to what Paul Volcker said. But wouldn't the president, or not the president, but wouldn't they need to burn off all of this debt in a hyperinflationary reset of the entire global system?
very good point. Exactly. And that's what scares the bejesus out of me
Yeah.
personally. Because you have to do it based on a war economy. Case in point, the reset of Germany under Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reality of a debt-based society, a
Mm-hmm.
paper-backed society. And that's always been the goal of these. They're sick people dominating for profit, and that's what it's really all about. That's what got to realize. It took me 4 years after that incident with Volcker to like get a handle on it, and said, "Oh my heavens!"
Yeah.
But I'm a dummy. I didn't still do the gold. Okay, I I had a little bit here and there, but I thought I was so smart going into the high rate yields of the subprime market, and so I lost my tail in 2008.
But wait a minute, nobody went to jail. And you brought this point up earlier, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, duh, no kidding. The banksters never go to jail.
No, because they're the ones that write those contracts. And
Exactly.
and we are the ones that do not read those contracts. So we just agree because we want whatever it is that they're selling us. So, really, that's even the Bank for International Settlement says only gold is the only financial asset that runs zero counterparty risk.
After I took my losses in 2008, and back in about 2010 rebuilding, retrospect is always 2020, rear
Yes.
view, okay? And what if I done what Volcker had said and positioned myself, especially now with the price of gold spiking? Again, it's not what it is, the value versus the dollar. It's what that gold can purchase. It's,
Exactly.
it's purchasing power.
Yeah.
And I look back and I said, I would be able to travel the world with my sweetheart. I wouldn't have to still work for a living at 65, 66 years old. Um, I wish I'd followed Volcker's advice and that never went anything but gold. I would be sitting so pretty. I would probably be even a little bit better off than Lynette Zang today. I don't know.
Well, you had Paul Volcker. I had my Uncle Al. And, the advantage, I actually love getting older because the experience that you lived through, the experiences that I lived through, this is the kind of thing that we need to pass down to the younger generation. Because as I was listening to you talk about, you being really kind of gung ho and a hot dog and in your 20s and the early 80s when this whole thing was kicking off, I mean, You know, these cryptocurrencies that came out, this is my physical representation of Bitcoin, my physical representation of Ethereum, and my physical representation of XRP, which are all designed to look like this, right? Real gold. And of course, they dubbed Bitcoin as digital gold. But, you know, they want us to think that this is just an old relic. And what are we talking about, right? Why not just embrace all of these digital currencies? Can you see a parallel between that kickoff and this kickoff?
100%. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. That's to me what Volcker was really saying. Get solid. Don't go with imitations. Paper is imitations. But in the mind of people, that becomes the real thing. And it's just not.
Right.
It's just paper. And that goes back into the crypto. I've been saying this. Wow. Crypto gives freedom from the Fed. They was how they were selling it, right? Freedom because it's alternative. But ladies and gentlemen, it's electronic. And the tokens they have that come out, that to me is more stranger than paper. At least paper has some ink on it and you can hold it and touch it. Okay, so we go digital for convenience, right?
Everything is always for convenience. I mean, you talked about a pocket of gold coins in
Yeah.
your hand. I mean, and that was deemed as a bad thing. Oh, I'm going to have to figure out. I'll get some of the smaller pieces and shake them. But that's real money. It's the only money that was not created by man.
Yeah.
Man's money has over 4,800 currencies don't exist anymore. This is this is 10 trillion, my $10 trillion Zimbabwe note, of
Yeah.
which I can't buy anything with.
Yeah, the Z's are great to show people what happened in Zimbabwe. And keep in mind how wealthy Zimbabwe is with minerals and raw materials. It's a
They were the
classic
breadbasket
example.
of the world at one point.
Yes, it's a
Well, at
classic
least
example
Africa.
of how central banks can really rip people off. It's a classic example of it. I like showing the Z's of that high nature too, because
Yeah.
yeah, uh, if that's one thing that people can get through their head is the illusion of money. And there's how many crypto billionaires are there today?
Right.
And I'm telling them, I says, take your crypto, cash it in for gold, and watch what happens. And they look at me like, "Oh, you idiot! I guess it comes full circle.
Full
You're an
circle.
you're an old fart like Volcker. You don't know what you're talking about. We know crypto's the way for the future. Oh yeah, tell that to electromagnetic pulse when they let it out on us, and we have no communication. You can't even turn on your computer
And
if the
governments
Wi-Fi.
can shut down the system.
Yeah, when the Wi-Fi is gone. Oh, what are you going to go trade your useless computer for a basket of bread?
Right.
Come on, get real. You can't eat crypto and you cannot eat gold.
That's
You
not
could,
entirely true. I have eaten some gold, the very thin flakes.
but that too will pass.
I won't even go into that one anymore. But you did bring up something that you referred to in the beginning too. And I mean, all of this is trying to show people that history, whether it rhymes or it repeats, it's upon us again. And what you talked about was diversification.
Yes,
And in the naivete of your youth, what did you think was diversified? Stocks and bonds, because one was equity and one was debt, right? That's what we were taught when we went to those schools. But
yes,
they're both in this country anyway, or in any country you want to. They're all based on this stuff, right? So if this stuff has no purchasing power value, does it really matter? And you know, maybe you can comment on the fact that when you're looking at countries as they enter and then they're in a hyperinflationary state, the stock markets fly because why? They're looking for a way to escape what's happening to the money. But
Exactly. It goes back to some of the stories of the Germany hyperinflation. Germans are kind of innovative people for the most part. Some of them are
mhm,
inventors, and a lot of people took their wheelbarrows full of marks, paper marks, and used them for insulation in their house. Just stuffed them down. They were great insulating factors. And they would shred them up and use them for insulation or even wallpaper. It was amazing how they used them to cover up a problem, wall boards that were that, and that's what they were more valuable in that than they were to try to buy some bread or some commodities.
exactly. And this
Which,
happens to be a Florida State of Tallahassee 1864 $5 bill, but it's the back of it is blank, and that's why I pulled it because the marks that were only printed on one side had
yeah,
more value as a piece of paper to write on than it did, to your point, to be able to buy anything. So were you really diversified? And I really want people to think about this. If everything you have is in the system, whether it's crypto or stocks or bonds, or they put them in wrappers, ETFs, mutual funds, any of that stuff, it is, if you think you're diversified, that's just your perception. Even if you're choosing to do that, you need to have tangible assets, gold and silver, both outside of the system in order to be appropriately diversified. Do you agree? Do you disagree?
100%. It is all about that because let's see when the defecating matter hits the fan big time, what do we have but trade? I mean, commodities, which is the whole basis of money to begin with. Okay. You go
Right.
back, let's turn the clock back to the early 1800s in America. Okay. You have the establishment of currency. Our founding fathers, they didn't focus on paper at all.
Mm-mm.
The Coinage Act of 1792 has what a dollar is defined as. It's a silver dollar with made totally of 90% pure silver. And that's what a dollar is right there by law, 1792. Okay. Then you have half dollars, quarters, dimes, all silver. And what really hit me is when you really deep read that 1792 Coinage Act
Mm-hmm.
because that's solid values. Sure, they
Mm-hmm.
were rare, but that was the king of the border, king of the
Mm-hmm.
border.
Mm-hmm.
And read that carefully because that act says anybody that debauched or counterfeited that coin, it's a death sentence. You were hung by the neck until dead for high treason. Our founding fathers knew very well you had to have that basis before you can ratify our Constitution and Bill of Rights. Without that basis, the Bill of Rights means nothing. Think about it. You
Well,
have to have that basic anchor point.
how did we allow this in the early 1900s? I mean, here in the US, which is supposed to be a democracy, when they legalized the Federal Reserve, and you can look on any of these bills, the Federal Reserve is a flippin' private corporation.
Yep.
And Federal Reserve note, a note is a dead instrument. And I have the data from, which if anybody hadn't seen the 3-part series that I did on Barr and his speech, go back and take a look at that, or I'll send you the link. But they actually show how, with a little bit of our gold foundation, then they brought in corporate debt as our money. That's what the Federal Reserve note is. It is corporate flippin' debt. And
Oh, yes, but it didn't start that way, Lynette.
no, it
It,
didn't. How
we,
did we
it
allow
took,
it?
yeah, because it's the old anomaly of how do you boil a frog? You gradually raise the heat till the frog is paralyzed and can't jump out. That's what we've been boiled, and this goes back in the whole history of this. And a great book on this is Ed Griffin's The Creature from Jekyll Island.
Yes, fabulous.
Massively well done job of analyzing this. Okay, so in a nutshell, what happened was the initial Federal Reserve notes were redeemable fully in gold on demand at the Federal Reserve branch. Look at it, what the 1940s, 1930s, it's right there. Read it very carefully, the wording on it. Redeemable in gold or lawful money, right? What is lawful money? It's silver. Silver is lawful money. Gold wasn't really lawful money because it was not part of the act. See, part of the Coinage Act of 1792. So we accepted the money because the Federal Reserve member banks and outlet, anybody could take that paper and get their gold out. Okay?
It's really a genius system. This other bill that I'm holding up, which is minted prior to 1971, is a pure Federal Reserve note. And it's pretty easy if you look on both the front and the back. There's not a whole lot of difference between the two.
Right.
And for 20 years, I really just cannot stand these people because it's so evil. For 20 years, they allowed all three pieces, the gold coin, the $20 gold certificate, and the $20 Federal Reserve note. Those are all stated values, $20. So for 20 years, people used all three of them, and they got used to thinking that they were all the same. This looks so much like that one. When these two went away, people thought nothing had changed, when in reality, now we were fully working for corporate debt, and they could abuse us and inflate this away. How did we allow elected officials to take away our power? Because you didn't like what the government did, you'd walk in with this and you'd walk out with this, and that would create restrictions around what the government could do legally as far as growing debt goes. Once this was gone, well, we see where we are today.
I look back at the watershed was JFK's assassination. He says no more Federal Reserve nonsense. He ordered the U.S. Treasury for the first time to issue silver certificates, the $2 silver certificates. And the Treasury was printing those, not the Federal Reserve. That's so important to understand.
That's important, yeah.
And because what is that? That derailed their plan to take America over financially, money-wise. It's JFK, in my opinion, was declaring war on Wall Street and eventually Paul Volcker. Okay. He was saying, we the people, and he gave that speech at Columbia University. The very word secrecy is repugnant to a republic, to this country. He's exposing the secret deals done to take over our money. And his executive orders made that sure that happened. Here's a fact, Lynette. When LBJ took the oath of office on Air Force One, he raised his hand, put his hand on the Bible, yada, yada. The very next thing he did was sign executive orders repealing those key executive orders. And he immediately ordered the coinage to be debauched. In other words, now it's no longer silver. Because what that did is started the ball rolling.
Yeah.
You take away the basis of what, and it's so funny, we now call it junk silver.
Yeah.
Okay? The pure silver. Look at those. Look at the values. Okay? They have held their purchasing power all the way through because it's pegged on silver prices,
Yep.
the pure metals. Oh my golly. And so this whole rationale LBJs was we have to do this because silver is rare and it's causing more. Oh,
Oh,
what a
that's
big lie
garbage.
that is. Silver is rare. That makes it valuable. That's the basis of the entire coinage act. The silver was extremely rare in 1792. Didn't stop our founding fathers from instituting that as the basis of value. The king of barter. Here's a fact. A silver dollar in 1792 was called a buck. Why? Because a silver dollar in the trading post invests one silver dollar, whether it's Spanish or American, would buy a buck deer to eat. That was the that was how they made the trading post operate. If you had silver dollars, man, you had the king of barter.
Yeah. I
You know,
didn't know that
'cause-
about deers. That is a really good
yeah,
thing to look at.
that was how they established it. Hunters would come in with a freshly cured, whether it's a big buck or a small buck. A buck deer would be equipped, they would buy for a silver dollar. That's everything else went down into trade, whether it's blankets or furs, based on that measurement. See,
Yep.
uh,
It's interesting because a few months, maybe 6, 7 months ago, I was talking to a trainer that I've known for years. He's an attorney turned gym rat and a very bright guy. Studied history. That was his undergraduate degree. Mid 40s. And I don't know how we started talking about it, but I made mention that silver used to be our coins. And
yeah,
he was shocked. He said, I was shocked that he was shocked. He
yes,
goes,
you should know better.
especially with his background and who he is. And so, but I realized that when I talk about sound money, number one, people don't understand what sound money is. And simply put, that's just money that is above central banks and governments' ability to inflate away. That's why it's sound. It maintains its purchasing power. And there are lots of reasons for that. But I digress. If we're asking people to demand sound money back in the system again, then they better understand what it is and why it's important. And so we came up, and if you haven't gotten one, then call your strategy specialist. She'll make sure you get it, Dr. Ott. But we came out with these dime cards, and it compares a pre-65 dime to just a new dime. And when we first printed these cards, this is an older one, so August 27th of last year. And our cost on this one dime at that time was $2.78 versus just the new dime. What can you buy with it? Nothing. In fact, I was going to do a little thing with this. Thank you. Because I have a whole bunch of change in this pink bag. And I don't even care about it. All it does is annoy me because there's no value in here,
Yes,
to it. But we just redid the cards again, like last week. And so the most current market on those dimes was almost $9.
yes. Oh yeah.
Okay. Is that the dime going up? Or is that the value of the dollar going
Going
down?
down. The value of the paper is in the toilet. Use it for toilet paper rolls. Okay. That,
Exactly.
you know, I hate to say I was right, but I've been right for 30 years on this. It's like, take a deep breath. I have quite a supply of junk silver that I after 2008 I said whatever I can do. I like silver for that reason. A dime especially. People in the know, that's still going to be a good barter tool. Okay?
100%.
100%. So versus the clad piece of crap that takes more money to mint than it's worth. It's bogus metal. There's
That's
nothing to it. It's just clad.
right. That's why they just got rid of the penny because the penny had no copper in it after virtually no copper in it after
Medicine chest.
1982. And
Yes.
it cost them 3.9 cents out of garbage to make a penny.
And here's the kicker. It's going to be the same cost to print a $20 bill even. It's going to be, they can't do it anymore. It's not sustainable.
That is why they have to go to cheaper and cheaper and cheaper
Yes.
money. And
And go
also,
into
well, I was going to say, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little carried away because I'm loving this conversation. This is such an important conversation. But, if you look at it, by the time when they were legalized to print $2.4 worth of every 20th of an ounce of gold that they held in deep storage, and that's exactly what it did. By 1933, they had printed so much money that they really couldn't even afford to put this out at $20. And so they got rid of it. And then the same thing happened. It's debauchery of the monetary system. They had to get rid of silver because it cost them more to create the silver dollars, quarters, half dollars, whatever, than the face value of it. So they got rid of that. That enabled them to debauch and destroy the value, the purchasing power, the value of the currency anymore. And to your point, it cost them 9.7 cents to print a $100 bill. It costs them less than that when it's digital. If all they have to do is push a button and
exactly.
create, go ahead. I'm going to give you the floor.
It's not sustainable. We knew that. I knew this, back in the 90s. But how do you get people to see it? Because I don't have to worry about that. I work my 9 to 5 job. I crack open my beer and watch football, college or it doesn't matter. It's the opiate that people just say, I'm happy. I don't need to worry about this. And this is, to your point, this is how we got to where we are. It's ignorance and apathy.
Well, that kind of takes it to another conversation that we're going to have to save for another day, but that is the dumbing down, intentional. Dumbing
100.
down, intentional division of conversation, the loss and lack of empathy, particularly from the 70s, and how lonely people are.
I went back into I got to tell that in my alma mater university that I donated a lot of funds to during the day when I was doing well paper wise. I went back to them and when I saw around 2008 and the market crash, etc. I offered to do a course on sound money, the university level, teaching these bright young minds about the power of money, real money, sound money. Do you think I even got a reply to my request? The answer
No.
is not only no, hell no. And I thought, then my donations to this university cease now because it's all a scam. Now, parenthetically, I kept talking about this on my radio show constantly. If nothing else, I have a platform with a radio show that was at that time was daily, 2 hours a day. And always for at least 20 minutes, I would talk about people, if I can say one thing to you, get set with sound money. You'll never go wrong, as that's how they manipulate people. You have
Exactly.
no choice. You want to have food on your table, line up, and let's stamp your forehead.
Yeah.
There's no choice anymore. And then if you have no choice, Lynette, are you really free?
This isn't that's what really sound money does is it gives you your freedom.
Freedom.
It's
Exactly. It goes back
mhm.
to you give the dictator the finger,
Mhm.
independent. If you don't have that, I mean, you don't have any way to be independent as our founding fathers envisioned and shown. And what good is a piece of paper constitution if you're totally controlled? See,
It doesn't mean anything. I mean, they just want you to believe we're in a democracy, but you and I are old enough to see how much freedom and how the rules have been put in place to make our lives, smaller and smaller and smaller. And 2008, we've known each other for a while. At 2008, 100% I knew that the system died. And that's when I started to develop my mantra. And I mean, I just did it based on what I was doing for myself to make sure that no matter what happened, that I could take care of my family. And so you want to, and it was 2023 where even though community was part of the mantra, I can't say that I really understood why it was, I mean, I knew it sounded good. It wasn't about it sounding good. It was in the mantra. I just wasn't doing anything with it until 2023. And that's when I started recognizing how important open and honest and respectful communication is, and how important it is to create surety in food, water, energy, security, barterability, which for me is primarily silver, but not only, wealth preservation, which actually spans all of the mantra pieces, and on the sound money part is gold for me, community and shelter. Because these are all the things that we need to lead a reasonable standard of living. And frankly, I've been working hard on developing all those other pieces since 2008. And I knew, like you, when I saw Bitcoin come in like 2010, and I went back and looked, to me it was a Trojan horse to usher in the next monetary system. Because when one system dies, another one is born. And for me, gold and silver hold your purchasing power, and that's the bridge from one system into
It's all
the
about
next
control. And bottom line is that how to control versus having people truly free. At the root of the story, Lynette, and we can wrap up with this, it's all about the love of money. It's the root of all evil. And the love of power of money
That's the
is
point.
what drives the common folk to the ground and grinding us to become nothing but puppets of the regime. And that's what I'm fighting for America. Okay. We have, it's crunch time.
It is crunch time. That's
We don't have time to screw around anymore.
Nope.
Got to awaken under this banner of sound money. That's always been their secret.
Yeah.
Paul Volcker and who he was. Here I am, a young, idealistic brainiac. I didn't see it then. I see it now, big time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thanks to you for your work to tell the story too.
It's
It's not
important.
enough though. We need millions more getting this. We just do. Um,
That's the work. That's the challenge. And that's why I have not retired, nor do I even see that anywhere in my future, to be honest with you. Because if we don't do this, if we don't, I feel, and I guess I'd like to know if you feel this as well. But in my lifetime, I feel like this is absolutely the best opportunity to get redeemable sound money into the new system. That's inevitable. The old system is already dead. In my opinion, it died in 2008. So let's get redeemable, because they want you to trust asset backed. Oh, look at Zimbabwe. They have a gold backed currency. Yeah. But it's nowhere in physical form, which means it's not redeemable. And that's why they could do that 44% overnight revaluation.
the
So
thing that really the banksters fear more than anything, Lynette, they really fear the hundredth monkey theory. In other words, if you get a certain percentage of people fully awake, you realize the stats of the American Revolution? It's like
3%.
3%, man. 3% mobilized. The vast majority, 97% of these are crazy radicals. Okay. But let's look at the population of America. Could show 5% support of sound money and turn out millions of Americans with his voice screaming, "We want our sound money back. We want the 1792 Coinage Act." It was That's what's so funny. The 1790 Coinage Act was never revoked. Still the law of the land. It's just not enforced.
Right. Well,
I
why would
challenge
they?
I challenge you. I challenge everybody listening to this. Google up with AI. It's wonderful. Read the 1792 Coinage Act. Read it from start to finish. That is the basis of our America's Bill of Rights. Without that, nothing else matters. You see? And that
Hmm.
party, go back to the basis.
Yeah.
Okay? It's Nobody's going to be offended by telling the truth of this matter. People, young college age kids, will say, "Oh my God, I never knew this." Just like
Yes.
your friend, the attorney.
Yes.
They don't know. Ignorance breeds apathy. And they're not hearing it in the universities, which are
Yeah.
controlled by the same group.
Hmm.
And this is the story that's not being told, Lynette. Still not being told.
You're telling it.
I'm
I'm
telling
telling
you.
it.
I'm
And
telling
we've
you.
got the global, there are a number of different sound money movements. I sit on the board of Citizens for Sound Money, which is a global movement. I go around the world talking about sound money and handing out sound money to try and educate people because we have to. I'm not worried about myself. I know what I've done. I'm not even worried about my children because I know what I've done. But I am worried about everybody else's children. And this is not the system that they have in mind, full surveillance. This is not okay with me. Full control. I don't want to leave a legacy of a feudal system with my great grandchildren.
To honor our founding fathers' vision, and that is the epitome of the 1792 Coinage Act. Because without that basis, without the anchor point, you have nothing to hold yourself to. Think
Exactly.
about it. It's so critically important, which is why these creatures in 1913 came in and formed this very corrupt private for-profit corporation. For profit?
For profit.
No, for control, which is the ultimate profit.
Yep.
Okay, I thank you for the opportunity, Lynette, to echo and tell the story because it needs to be told and needs to be retold and
Yes, it
screamed from the
does.
rooftop. We're not, heavens, America's in deep, deep kimchi right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Unfortunately, the world is in
yeah,
deep, deep kimchi, if you want, because that can be very spicy. But it's
kimchi's again.
also, there's always a flip side because there is opportunity in crisis. And
Yes,
that's what I'm trying to do to get sound money back in the system again, Dr. Ott. So I cannot even begin to tell you how much I appreciate you coming and sharing this. And hopefully we'll see where this can go
let's end with
because
a little story.
people need to know what you know, period.
Thank you. I made the acquaintance of through a friend of a friend, an 80s something year old gentleman, um, who was just amazing story. He was one of the first original Navy SEAL team, 1962.
Oh, wow.
Uh, and he tells a story of his training as a Navy SEAL back in Vietnam era, okay, which is why Kennedy trained this elite force of SEALs. He had to do his halo jump, which is the ultimate pass of the SEAL, and he did it in Vietnam over the ocean beach area. And long story short, the wind came up, blew him in to Viet Cong territory.
Oops.
He landed in a bamboo field. They watched him come down in the middle of the night with the moon, And so here's two Viet Cong soldiers with guns and the farmer that had owned the bamboo field. They came, and here's the key thing he told me. He says, we were told as Navy SEALs to act crazy, and keep repeating the the mantra, I'm crazy. You had to be crazy to be out in the middle of the night parachuting.
That's a
And nothing,
fact.
nothing but a bathing suit, a spandex type of thing. But he had no guns, no guard, no identifying dog tags. The SEALs were working at that time with Air America, CIA, this type of stuff. So he had no identification. But here's what he had. He had dong, the currency, the actual not only paper dong but gold on him.
Wow.
Or if he was blown in, and the Kong would come, he'd act crazy. Yes,
Here's a
crazy,
dong.
crazy. He's over and over. I'm crazy, and hold up the dong. And the story is they looked at him. Oh, he is crazy, but he has dong to pay off. They took the money, took the gold, and let him go. He said that saved my life right there. It's
You just gave me chills because that's the way a lot of people have survived horrendous circumstances by
yes,
by buying their way out with gold.
yeah. And so they thought, well, why shoot him? He gives us, current actual value. He ransomed his life and was able to get back to safe haven. That's
And
a
you know what I've really come to realize, it's really the youth that creates the revolution, but it's us elders that have had these different experiences that we can, share in a very credible way to help people understand what is really happening today, because it happened then and it has happened so many times in the past, and we can make a difference. And I think a lot of people feel like, well, my story is not important. What can I do? I'm only one person. And to your earlier point, that's my goal, was 3% of the global population, 8.4 billion people. You're right, one person can't do anything, but look at what we've done here today. And I hope it's just the beginning, because you do need a platform to make sure that people hear that. So we'll figure something out.
Okay, my dear. And thank you for all that you've done. Your interview with me, a lot of people have seen that, have
Mm-hmm.
contacted me and said, and they don't, I don't know that much about what you're doing and I need to be updated on that so I can point people to you. Okay.
We will definitely, we'll talk some more offline, but again, because there's more work that we have to do.
Yes.
We have to come together. We don't have to agree on everything. We don't, because that's what discourse is, and it's a way of learning from each other. But we can come together in community to make a positive difference for the world, really, for the whole world. We can do this.
And by teaching and being respectful, we then become better together by understanding. So there we are, dear.
Very well said. And I hope that all of you, this just kind of wet your whistle a little bit for more to come, because it's so critically important that we understand what's really happening in here, and that we come together in community, have the conversation, make a difference, help the world understand really what sound money is and the importance of it, and demand redeemable sound money back in the system again. And until next we meet, please be safe out there. Bye-bye.